away from the microphone.
Oops. Yeah. Oh no, I'm fine. I just.
Thank you.
this is how you want it. Oh, here we go. Yeah, it's test. It's interesting. Talk way out here. Want to switch us around?
Yeah. It's actually just everyone shift down one and we'll put clap right here with Maria.
Okay. So after I introduce you, then I'll step back.
Yeah. All right. That's all good. I have no remarks.
I have written remarks, but this is what I did to them. That's I need.
Hey, sir. Good to see you. How's everything going? Hey. Oh, okay. What's up, Greg? What's that? I look forward to it, sir. Thanks.
These microphones are set up hot. If you do want to mute them, you can. You can hit this button that will turn the microphone off while you hold it.
Mine is.
Yours doesn't do it, unfortunately. All the other ones do that. But they all work. All controls and this. Okay.
That's interesting. So they're always live.
Good.
Unless you want to mute it.
You can't talk bad about us down there. Can't imagine how hot.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The panel session will begin in about 5 minutes. Please take your seats as you can. And at this time, I ask you to turn off your electronic devices. And as a reminder, before we get started, audience members will be invited to ask live questions from the standing mics on the floor at the appropriate time. And also at the conclusion of this discussion, please visit the WEST app to provide your feedback in the session survey. Thank you. 5 minutes, please.
Hey, how are you? Good to see you. Yeah, absolutely. Good to see you. How are things? Oh, good. That's good, man. Anytime we get cross reading into the interagency staff, I think it's really important so that they understand the capabilities that we can bring and how we need to better work after success. Sicker wheels, you guys are very familiar. That's the sick game is a huge challenge. We're limited by authorities to go over there. Try to leverage how transfer brings game or something. Candidly, those guys need our capacity. We need access and authorities to do this. God, how are you, brother? Good to see you.
Why don't you get a picture of all the cyber guys together?
Yeah, another year and a half or so. Yeah. Unless fire breaks.
It's excellent because I think he's going to get the first question. I'm going to get the second question. So he's got the first one. I got the second.
Well,
so
now that I know
say
you're in the
everything
audience, I'm going to defer that question. I'm going to phone a friend. How much
What do you think of the? What do you think of the MTS?
Awesome.
These chairs are set up for.
Yeah, they can't change the mics, so it's press to hold for cold. As soon as you let go, it's going to be hot again.
forward to it, buddy. Yeah.
Good afternoon. I'm Bill Hamblett, the Editor-in-Chief of Proceedings at the U.S. Naval Institute, and I'm happy to introduce the panel session, What Key Capabilities Do Our Numbered Fleets Need to Address the Near and Far Global Security Demands? I'd like to thank 4 Incorporated, represented by Senior Account Manager Chad Morgan, for sponsoring today's panel session. You can visit them on the exhibit floor in booth 2348. And now I have the pleasure of introducing the moderator of the panel, Admiral Scott Swift, U.S. Navy retired, former commander, U.S. Pacific Fleet. Admiral Swift attended San Diego State University, received his commission in 1979 through the Aviation Reserve Officer Candidate Program. During his 39-year career, Admiral Swift commanded Strike Fighter Squadron 97, Carrier Air Wing 14, Carrier Strike Group 9, the U.S. 7th Fleet, and the U.S. Pacific Fleet. And during those many tours, he participated in combat operations, Praying Mantis, Southern Watch, Enduring Freedom, and Operation Iraqi Freedom. He's also a Proceedings author, and I would point out that in the January issue of Proceedings, he wrote the American Sea Power Project article on wartime command and control. Admiral Swift, it's great to have you here as our panel moderator. The show is yours, sir.
Appreciate it. So thanks for that kind introduction, Bill. As many of you in the audience, I look out, I'm at that point now where I know more people in the audience than I do on the panel. Certainly walking around and Tom and Charlie Brown over there. I got to watch my P's and Q's. Charlie Brown's going to be taking notes, and his wife Kay is going to come after me if I don't do well on this piece. So full disclosure, I'm a board member on USNI, and I would strongly encourage you to write an article for USNI, despite my own reluctance to write myself. That's meant as an encouragement because Bill is just a fantastic editor. So if you've read the article and you were impressed by it, it's because of Bill's editing. If you weren't impressed by it, it's because of my displeasure at writing. And it's great to have the somewhat new CEO of USNI here in the front row, Ray. It's great to have you here. Great West already. Boy, you're coming out of the chute with a bang, bigger than ever. But this is a great panel that we've got here today. A little bit of live virtual going on. Admiral Clapperton, first to my left, is the commander of Fleet Cyber Command, 10th Fleet, and Navy Space Command. On the VTC is Lieutenant General Roger Turner, who's the commanding general of 3MEF and commander of U.S. Marine Forces Japan. So you can imagine he's a little bit busy calling in from his home. Vice Admiral Mike Boyle, next one down the line is the commander of, next down the line is Brad Gehring, the acting commanding general of 1st Expeditionary Force just up the road here. His counterpart, Mike Boyle, commander of 3rd Fleet. And last on the line down there is Vice Admiral Andrew Tongson, the commander of the Pacific area and commander of Coast Guard Defense Force West. So my role here today is as a moderator, not as a participant in the dialogue. My opinion after 6 years of retirement is lacking relevancy and probably not what the audience came to hear. These are the experts, in my opinion, leading consequential forces at the tactical edge of our national strategic interest. You can see what's going on with our MEFs and our numbered fleet commanders by the fact that many of them are out operating, doing their day-to-day job, which makes them difficult to attend an event such as this. So national strategic interest, in the most consequential time of my direct experience, Bill mentioned when I first enlisted back in '78 and retired just 6 years ago, and now continue to stay engaged in national security affairs. I've never seen such a consequential time from a global perspective, not just my central experience in the Indo-Asia Pacific. I've asked each of the panelists to make a short introductory remarks. And Roger, we'll go to you after Admiral Clapperton, just to give you a heads up. I know it's a little challenging. 3 stars are looking great on you there, buddy. So we'll go right down the list with Admiral Clapperton, Lieutenant General Turner, and then Major General Gehring, Vice Admiral Boyle, and then Vice Admiral Tongson bringing up the end. So with that, Clap, I'll turn it over to you for opening comments.
Thanks, Admiral, very much. Again, Admiral Spicer, thanks to you again for the opportunity. I appreciate the opportunity to speak also at the IW Pavilion earlier this morning. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm here representing Fleet Cyber, JFHQ Navy, Navy Space Command, the Navy Cryptologic Office, and Commander U.S. 10th Fleet. And Admiral Paparo teases me all the time that my signature block is getting too long. What I would say is, while that is true, it also enables me to bring together a whole host of capabilities and authorities and the talents of nearly 20,000 men and women across that enterprise, officer, enlisted, reserve, active duty, civilian, and contractor, that provide global capability to the Navy and to the Joint Force. And just a quick encapsulation of some of the many things that my team has been able to bring to the Joint Force in a very consequential way, as Admiral Swift said, in this very dynamic year that's happened here over the last year. So first and foremost, my Task Force 1050 and 1060 have been providing critical battle space awareness and assured C2 to the forces in the Red Sea, the Gulf of Aden, and the 5th Fleet AOR as they're involved in kinetic operations, enabling them to have the battle space awareness and the targeting capability to be able to take down those cruise missiles, counter UAVs, and then also provide insights across the 5th Fleet AOR. Task Force 1060 has also been absolutely vital in their support to Naval Forces Europe, as well as European Command, providing critical insights across not only Europe, but in support of the Russian-Ukraine conflict. And again, very proud of the work that they are doing in both of those task forces in incorporation with the Navy Integrated Firing Element, or KNIFE, that helps to provide that overhead precision targeting capability, as well as critical battle space awareness. Task Force 1040 provides vital insights to the Southern Command AOR, really helping General Richardson and her team layer both cyber capabilities as well as intelligence and sharing capabilities with our partners in Central and South America to help make the United States the partner of choice in that critical AOR. And perhaps one of the most visible capabilities that they provide is insights that have facilitated and enabled multiple drug stops that have resulted in tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars of illicit drugs that include fentanyl and other drugs of concern coming across our southern border. So great work by the 1040 team. And then we go out to Task Force 1070 in Nyack Pacific, and the team that we provide out there, as well as then bringing in my cyber authorities as the regional cyber coordinating authority for U.S. Indo-PACOM. And really here what we're talking about is significant integration and synchronization of the non-kinetic capabilities and the warfighting capabilities of Assured C2, battle space awareness, over the horizon targeting, and that integration of non-kinetic effects with the Joint Force Maneuver. And we have exercised this, we have war gamed this, we have integrated into the daily operations, activities, and investments across the Indo-PACOM AOR, working really closely with Vice Admiral Boyle, Vice Admiral Thomas, and Admiral Paparo as they maneuver their maritime forces, but also with the broader Joint Force as well. And so advancing that understanding and that true incorporation of non-kinetics and kinetic maneuver together has been absolutely vital. And then significant innovation from a group that we call the Navy Cyber Warfare Development Group, or Task Force 1090, as we've stood up Navy space here in the last year. And then I've recently been confirmed as the Navy Space Commander. Again, bringing those authorities together, we have been able to really drive some innovation that has improved our ability to bring not only EW, cyber, but now also space capabilities to the Joint Force. And it's really the integration of those non-kinetics that makes the difference, right? One single piece of it is a problem, but when you integrate it and tie it together with Joint Force maneuver and deception and emissions control, it really makes it a powerful tool for the Joint Force. And so we've been able to do that, and we're really proud of that work. And then finally, on the defensive cyber side of operations with my Navy Net Warfare Command and Navy Cyber Operations or Defensive Operations Command and CDOC, so Task Force 1010 and 1020, significant advancement in our awareness, both at the endpoint and the identity level of our classified and unclassified networks, and then bringing in artificial intelligence and big data analytics to be able to better detect malicious cyber activity against our networks, which not only defends them, but also enables resiliency and redundancy of those critical C2 networks that are so vital for our Joint Force. And really, that capability drives a deterrence of its own, right? When a malicious cyber actor, state or non-state, whatever they may be, tries to penetrate DOTA networks, and they're encountered by those kinds of capabilities, those kinds of hardened networks, and those kinds of tools to deter their maneuver or prevent their maneuver, that creates a deterrence factor of its own. So quite a bit going on, and look forward to the panel discussion today and hopefully your questions in those areas. So, sir, thank you very much.
Thanks for that, Craig. General Turner?
Hey, sir, it's Roger Turner. I just want to check to see if you guys can hear me okay.
Loud and clear.
All right, thank you, Admiral, and teammates there, and everybody in the audience. I apologize for not being there in person, but just took command a few weeks ago and kind of getting sorted here in Japan. So, but anyway, it's an honor to join today and be part of this distinguished panel. I think, as Admiral Swift and others have laid out, I mean, I agree with you, sir. It's this is the most consequential time that we have seen, certainly in my career, as the challenges we face globally and regionally, and really the sorts of tactical, operational, and strategic challenges that these competitors pose to us. Us here in 3MEF, right? We are really inextricably linked to U.S. 7th Fleet, MAR-4 PAC, and U.S. Pacific Fleet, and really in competition, crisis, and as we prepare for conflict. Secondly, I think everybody is aware that the Marine Corps has really been on the force design journey over the last few years, and now those capabilities are really starting to flow into our forces in earnest as we really realize the vision of the stand-in force, with both 3MEF and 1MEF being key components of that, along with the rest of the Joint Force and our partners and allies. And we are starting to see those capabilities come online and really gain significant relevance. Obviously, for us here, our location in Okinawa with a 3-star MAGTF headquarters here gives us some key advantages and our ability to deliver on some of the most significant challenges that we face. But really, our ability to integrate across with 7th Fleet, our ability to integrate with U.S. Joint Force, and probably most importantly, our ability to integrate with partners and allies gives us key capability. And so I think as I look at it, as Admiral Clapperton just kind of laid out, right? Some of the potential adversaries have some significant capabilities. I think for us, the ability to leverage partner and ally capabilities, and our ability to act decisively in a decentralized way at tempo, are probably our two key competitive advantages against the adversaries that we're kind of considering. So I think as far as specific capabilities, and we can talk about this more later, I think the ones that are central on my mind, and Clapp kind of already laid out some of that, but a mission partner network that allows us to have partners and allies with shared domain awareness is key to kind of leveraging that competitive advantage that I talked about. We've got some pretty good capabilities now, but it's not good enough, right? And if we're going to be able to face the challenges we have, we're going to have a better mission partner network that allows us to have that shared domain awareness with partners and allies. So that's going to be key as we discussed. Secondly, really is improving our posture out here, and that's been a journey that we've been on here, along with other elements of the Joint Force. But improving posture, our ability to sustain ourselves in conflict, and our ability to improve kind of our fighting stance here is really a critical capability that we are working on and need help with. Improving readiness, specifically material condition of the amphibious fleet, the connectors, and the other expeditionary warfare capabilities. And that's key to our campaigning objectives, our competition, and also in crisis. And then lastly, I think the key capability that we need more of is the ability to deliver fires at tactically relevant ranges, but do it platform agnostic, and the ability to have low signature expeditionary capabilities that can deliver fires in ways that pose significant challenges to our potential adversaries. So those are the things that are central on our minds out here, and I'll stop there and turn it over to General Gearing.
Brian?
Okay, thanks, sir. Great to be here. Great to be here with the gentleman to my left and right, and it's really good to see General Turner dialing in from 3MEF. So for 1MEF, I think I'll speak a little bit by exception because there are certainly some similarities between what 1MEF is doing and what 3MEF is doing. But just to baseline everybody, based on your knowledge of the MEF and the MAGTF, I think our real value proposition and where we really get our strength from is the way we're organized, and that's as a Marine Air Ground Logistics Task Force. So we have an aviation combat element, a ground combat element, a logistics combat element, most recently an information combat element. We put a command element on top, and I think what makes that really powerful is we can scale that down to a couple hundred people or up to 46,000 Marines and sailors that we have at 1MEF. So that's where we draw our strength, our ability to task organize. For 1MEF, very focused in the Indo-PACOM AOR, but we also have a global responsibility to be ready to respond to crisis anywhere around the world. So, like I said, we focus on Indo-PACOM, but we pay attention to what's going on elsewhere in the world. Like I said, we're scalable, and most recently for 1MEF, we were JTF certified. I think what's different for 1MEF over the last 2.5 years, what's changed is for a couple decades, we were engaged in combat operations in the CENTCOM AOR. And as we kind of de-scoped that for 1MEF, we were able to really focus into the Indo-Pacific. And that's really been my focus and energy, as it was my predecessor, General George Smith, and now going forward. So based on that, I mean, I break it down to 3 real priorities for 1MEF, and then another focus area for our commanders. The first one is I am a force provider. So I have GFM responsibilities. We form, train, and certify Marine Expeditionary Units in conjunction with 3rd Fleet, and then we deploy them. And they'll work for various global combatant commanders based on what the Secretary of Defense decides, but we are responsible to form, train, and certify them. We also form, train, and deploy under the Unit Deployment Program both squadrons, battalions, and detachments to 3MEF. So General Turner can get done what he needs to get done in his area of the AOR. So that's really focus number one. And there's other areas where occasionally we'll be asked to deploy to other global combatant commands. And for example, over the last 12 months, 1MEF had forces in every geographic combatant commander's AOR. So like I said, global in nature. Second priority for us is force modernization, much like General Turner talked about. It's about transitioning units. That's a very fragile process. It needs to be done with precision, and it needs to be done on time. So we spend a lot of resources and focus on that area. to make sure that we modernize responsibly. Our third priority is campaigning west of the international date line. And like I said, that's probably what's changed the most in the last 2.5 years for 1MEF. This is all about posture, deterrence, reassurance. It's about operations, activities, and investments with our allies and partners, much like General Turner said. It's about competing, and it's about setting conditions for crisis or conflict. So that's in our job jar, and that's something we keep a real emphasis on here at 1MEF. And then finally, our fourth focus area is retention. It's retaining the force we have, our best and brightest. And when I think about where we really have a competitive advantage over would-be adversaries, and that's in the strength of our people, from our NCO Corps to our staff NCO Corps, and how professionalized that is, as well as our officer corps. So I'm going to pause there, sir. I look forward to conversations and questions. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Brad. Admiral Boyle?
Thanks, Admiral Swift. And so in full disclosure, as the former EA to Admiral Swift, if the direction that I'm taking Third Fleet is not quite right, I will either credit or blame him for those efforts. But also, as you probably have seen in my bio, I've had the opportunity to work for Admiral Harris, then Admiral Swift as EA, and then directly for Admirals Aquilino and Paparo as the Director of Maritime Ops in the Pacific. So I have been studying this Pacific challenge really directly and intently for the last 5 or 6 years, if not longer. And so I thought I would just tell you a little bit about what I do at Third Fleet, because I think for some of you who maybe have been out for a few years, you have this vision of Third Fleet as that sleepy place people like to go. We're the fleet schedulers who make sure people get out the door. It's really been changing over the last 4 or 5 years. And that started with Admiral Swift with Third Fleet Forward, which is no more relevant today than it was then. But for Third Fleet, we've got really kind of 3 missions. One is we are the Navy's defense support to civil authorities arm. So if there are wildfires or earthquakes or floods or whatever happens here on the west coast of the United States, we're ready to take the force and that excess capacity that we have and apply it to that problem set. So tracking what capability we have, who's ready, who's not ready, how can we use them, how does the process work, doing all that. I think the thing that a lot of folks know that we do is that we certify the force. We also are that force generation element of the Pacific. But in certifying the force, I kind of often tell people that that's a team effort between me and the TICOMs. So the Air Boss and the SWO Boss and Sub-PAC do the training. I just ensure that they are training for the right thing. And then I certify that the units that are going to go forward are ready to go for what the combatant commander needs. And so that's my kind of second mission. And then the third mission is I'm an operational commander. And whether that, as the operational commander on the West Coast, whether that's here on this side of the date line, where last summer we had Russian assets that were within 100 miles of San Diego, we have to posture the force to enable prosecution. So this is in a time when I would tell my staff where, we're providing lethal aid to Ukraine against Putin. And if Putin wanted to escalate in a non-nuclear way, I think the Pacific is a place that he might decide to do that. So with Sev and Oscar out and about in the summer months, I certainly have to have an operational staff that's ready to tackle those problems. But including the other operational role would be that if there's a conflict in the Western Pacific, it's going to be more than 7th Fleet can handle alone from the Navy component. And so most likely we'll split up the battle space between myself, 7th Fleet, 1MEF, and 3MEF, working directly for Admiral Paparo with the Air Force and the Army, and the Spacecom and Cybercom and all the rest of the Joint Force supporting. But I think the thing that I've been doing the most and spending the most time on, and that is the most consequential at Third Fleet as part of certifying the force for the job they might be asked to do, is rehearsing operations. And, so I'm going to start with a polarizing statement because my old boss used to say that's the best way to get an audience attention. And The polarizing statement is we're not operational in the Pacific. You know, the Pacific is a peacetime theater that is structured for peacetime operations. We are structured to provide presence and to execute theater security cooperation. And so that's, you know, if you really think about it, that's what we do. And when we're providing presence, whether that's through constructive kills or large exercises or whatever we're doing just that, presence. If we were operating, you know, like my counterpart over in Fifth Fleet, where we're deciding exactly where we're going to put the force and how much harm could come to them, then co-analysis becomes a little bit more important, because we have to decide, how do I minimize risk to force while I'm maximizing my ability to execute the mission? And the process of doing that work is much more detailed than we typically do in major exercises. To get down into the details at a speed that is consistent with what the tactical edge, the units can do, is something we don't practice. And the way that we order forces around in the Pacific is we write them orders. That's something we don't practice. The way that we integrate the joint force is to write orders to the joint force, mission orders that describe what it is they're going to be doing. So my boss at Pac Fleet, Admiral Aquilino, told me, hey Fonz, I need you to integrate the joint force. And so I thought, that shouldn't be too hard. I wonder why the previous DMO, Lung Aquilino, didn't integrate the joint force. And so as I started to pull back that onion, what I realized is we've become kind of carrier strike group centric in the Navy. And by that I mean we've driven the carrier into CENTCOM to provide sorties into the ATO, and we've protected our mobile airfield with the CRUDES and submarines and MPRA that surround it. This is going to be a different fight in the Pacific. And so the integration can't happen at the tactical edge, because CLAP tells me I've got to be working through emissions control. So if I'm silent out there on the front end, I can't push the planning down to the bottom. I have to pull that planning, centralized planning and decentralized execution. That's got to happen within our maritime operations centers. My MOC, about 190 folks, has 400 reservists that fall in on top of me, built in a peacetime structure where the indications and warning would allow us the time to rally when required. I don't know that we're going to have the indications and warning to make that happen. So we have to be ready to command and control, and we have to be ready to send orders to the joint force. So that's probably the most consequential thing we're doing at Third Fleet, because I think that's how the JTF will operate. The JTF will do centralized planning, integrate the capabilities of information operations, space, cyber, the Air Force, exquisite at all security classification levels, and then send out orders to enable that maneuver and the effects that we have to have going downrange. That sounds real easy, but when I walk the floor, there is a ton of capability that goes from platform to weapon. And so the question I always ask is, how do I get it from commander's intent to my headquarters to platform to weapon? And so that command and feedback mechanism that ties me to the forces is the thing that I'm rehearsing at Third Fleet at every opportunity I can. And we've had great luck pulling in the Air Force and integrating that joint capability. We've had great luck pulling in our Marine brethren to integrate that planning capability to ensure that we know how to order the synchronization of joint fires. In a week's time, we'll be up at Pendleton doing Project Convergence, where we're going to pull in the Army to integrate their fires capability in a orders writing process that tells those experiments to happen. So that's what we're doing at Third Fleet. I'll stop there. Hopefully that's piqued your interest and given you the opportunity to think of some questions for me as we proceed.
Thanks, Fonz. Admiral Thompson.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Admiral Swift, for the introduction and the scene center. I'm thrilled to be here once again at WEST with you. Thank you to AFCEA and the U.S. Naval Institute for the invitation to participate among this distinguished panel up here. It's truly an honor for me to represent the United States Coast Guard. As mentioned, I'm the commander of the U.S. Coast Guard Pacific Area. For those who are not familiar with the area of responsibility, I always describe it as from polar bears to penguins, Hollywood to Bollywood, and a little bit more. So that's pretty vast. If you think about that, that's 74 million square miles of ocean in more than 70 countries. My counterpart, the commander of the U.S. Coast Guard Atlantic area, he has a remaining part of the world. Why did I say all this? Because we are a global Coast Guard. However, our portfolio of ships, aircraft, bases, and people is not extensive. In its entirety, the United States Coast Guard is only about 50,000 sentinels strong. So what we lack in scale and bodies, we make up for with a unique portfolio of broad military, law enforcement, intelligence, and regulatory authorities, combined with subject matter expertise. To answer the overarching guiding question of this panel, I wholeheartedly believe that the United States Coast Guard, our women and men, our sentinels, offer both the joint force and the numbered fleets, for that matter, the entire world, a key capability and distinct value proposition that we call maritime governance. As our Commandant, Admiral Linda Fagan, likes to say, ours is a people business. We are much more than ships and aircraft. In fact, every day to promote maritime governance, Coast Guard sentinels conduct search and rescue, fisheries and maritime law enforcement, humanitarian assistance and disaster response, maritime security, and facilitating of commerce throughout the world, particularly for our nation. We do this often in very small groups, complementing the work of our numbered fleets, and with a tremendous impact on the globe. I hope to offer you a glimpse of the unique ways the Coast Guard contributes to our global security demands by combining enduring presence and expertise with niche missions and authorities, like tackling the flow of narcotics into our nation, or conducting maritime security patrols in the high latitudes, or countering illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing on the high seas, or in a partner's sovereign waters. For instance, just recently, the Coast Guard cutter Weishi offloaded 8,000 kilograms of cocaine worth $240 million. And that's on top of the nearly $1 billion in cocaine that the Coast Guard removed from the Eastern Pacific in fiscal year 23 alone. Last fall, when the Coast Guard cutters Kimball and Bertov met presence when a PRC and Russian Surface Action Group operated in Alaskan and Arctic waters, they were there, protecting our sovereignty. Last year, the Coast Guard cutter Stratton conducted a highly successful Taiwan Straits transit with exemplary handling of approaching PRC Coast Guard vessels. Our Indo-Pacific support cutter, the Harriet Lane, is in Oceania right now underway, strengthening partnerships and leveraging 12 bilateral law enforcement agreements we have with Pacific Island countries to protect what they see as a lot of as an existential issue, their protein security, talking about their fisheries. To promote maritime governance, it is a service imperative to build trust and cultivate partnerships that grow our capabilities, expand our reach, and increase resilience to threats and challenges. We prioritize training and exercises and deployments with our DoD brethren, the interagency, and foreign partners. Right now, the U.S. Coast Guard Patrol Forces Southwest Asia has 6 Coast Guard fast response cutters embedded with 5th Fleet in support of CENTCOM and national security objectives. Our port security units are integrated with the Maritime Security Group 1 detachment in Guam to augment the embarked security mission, supporting operations in disputed territories, international conflicts, and expeditionary environments. We are also party to several multilateral groups: the North Pacific Coast Guard Forum, the Pacific Island Nations Forum, the Pacific Quadrilateral Defense Cooperation Talks, Southeast Asia Maritime Law Enforcement Initiative, the list goes on. Strong partnerships in maritime governance. And there are sentinels living and working in places across the globe, sharing information, exchanging expertise, and modeling professional behaviors as a trusted partner. For a small but capable service to promote and uphold maritime governance while meeting global security demands, we rely on a network of like-minded nations and organizations, strong partnerships, teamwork, and what I like to call relentless incrementalism to tackle violations, not nations, across our oceans. With our unique capabilities and authorities, we remain committed to augmenting and coordinating with our numbered fleets to ensure maritime governance both domestically and across the world so that our nation remains safe, secure, and prosperous. Thank you. I hope you have a bunch of questions for me based on what I said. I look forward to the dialogue. God bless and Semper Paratus.
Hey, thanks for those introductory comments. What I'd like to do is to move to a couple of questions within the panel here to prime the pump for the audience, because this is really about you and your questions of these gentlemen and leaders here. And I recognize that all of you have unpacked an awful lot. If you'd like to comment on others' comments that have been made here, please don't hesitate to take this opportunity. But Admiral Clapperton, for you first, you touched on the comments of Admiral Paparo recognizing how busy you are. I think the only one on this panel that has, there's no one on this panel that has a larger AOR than you are. When you look at all those tasks that you have, as this audience is most familiar with, the Navy Space Force is the newest piece. How is it that you integrate that into your job jar of all the things that you're doing, and how do we take advantage of space? My criticism myself is I really never viewed myself as fully understanding space, and now it's actually critical to all that we do. All these leaders here on the panel with you have commented on that. How do you integrate space, and how do you balance that with all the other things that you're doing?
Yeah, thanks very much for that question. And it has been really a force multiplier for us, right? And as many of my bosses have said, and I certainly support, is we win with people. And so we have taken some very specific steps across my enterprise to make sure that we have the right talent and the right people to be able to integrate those capabilities. So, you see things inside the Navy. We have our first group of space cadre officers out in the Navy now at various commands around the Joint Force and within the Navy, providing that insight and expertise. Maritime space officers now, a group of almost 60 of them out in the force, again, providing force multiplying capability and working at the Echelon 2 and Echelon 3 levels to talk about how we integrate space capabilities as a force multiplier for the broader Joint Force. But we haven't just stopped there with space, right? We've done the same things with our cyber force. So we have maritime cyber officers, and we've created a rating for our enlisted folks for cyber warfare technicians. And again, all those efforts are to make sure that, one, we manage the talent that we have. Obviously, it's a challenge for not just us, but broader DoD and the civilian force to find people with the skill sets in these highly technical areas. But our goal really there is to create expertise in each of those specific areas, right? I need experts, not generalists. When we're going against the kinds of adversaries that we are, with the capabilities that they have, we need people that can bring that expertise to bear. Within Navy Space, we have now gotten our missions, functions, and tasks approved all the way up through OPNAV. That is driving the manpower assessment that's going on right now for Navy Space. The final assessment of that isn't complete yet, but we believe that that's going to drive an increase in our staff by 200 to 250 people. And where we see that going is then pushing forward what I call integrated firing elements that are going to go around to the Echelon 2 and Echelon 3 staffs and then work to do exactly that. These are going to be specially trained people. There might be WTIs, where there will be WTIs within them, but there'll also be a broader group. And then they will rotate through these Echelon 2 and Echelon 3 staffs to talk about exactly how we use space as a force multiplier for you, and how we can work together to synchronize and integrate those capabilities. And so, again, while it has added an additional hat, and it seems like a lot of responsibilities, and it is, and when you step back and look at it, the blending of those authorities and those capabilities, and then creating those experts in space, in cyber, and information technology, and then bringing all of their skills together, it's actually been really powerful and a force multiplier for us. So thanks for that, sir.
Yeah, thanks for that, Clap. Andy, you mentioned how large your AOR is, and having grown up here in San Diego, my view of the Coast Guard, it was all about rescues and safety on the waterfront. That's certainly a much different job, Jar, although important to what you do. You own all the space here along the coast. You also own space that is far afield. As you look at your challenges from an operational commander perspective across the entire Indo-Asia Pacific, how do you address those unique threats and opportunities, and specifically in the context of taking advantage of that Coast Guard approach? I mean, I think you still do collaborative efforts with the Chinese for longline fishing up in the northern Pacific as well. Those are those opportunities where you may have access where the traditional military forces don't. How do you take advantage of those challenges and opportunities?
Yes, sir. Thank you for that question. I'll start out by saying it's very clear what our mission set is in that space that you just described. I think the national security strategy, as well as our nation's Indo-Pacific strategy, outline it right on. So promote a free and open Indo-Pacific. I'll offer to you that in our nation's Indo-Pacific strategy, it basically tells us what our mission is. Of the 400 plus U.S. agencies, the U.S. Coast Guard is the only one that's specifically named in that document. And it states that we will also innovate to meet civilian security challenges, expanding U.S. Coast Guard presence, training, and advising to bolster partner capabilities. And that's under the subject of maritime governance. So what do you do with something like that? I think we all understand how do you operationalize strategies like that? It ends up being a campaigning approach. And that's what we've done in Pacific area. So our campaigning approach has 3 lines of effort: prepare a ready force, generate combined effects, and uphold governance. And we do everything in terms of operations, activities, investments based on these LOEs getting after what our strategic objectives are moving forward. In a nutshell, I've already talked about some of these concepts, but I would say they apply domestically as well as internationally. This is being a trusted partner, seeing threats and challenges through whoever we're trying to partner with, their eyes, meeting them where they are with what they want, violations, not nations. In many of the countries that I talk to, that's very important, is they don't like to see 2 giants involved in something as that nation is trying to get something resolved. Think in terms of fisheries and protein security when I say that. It's not lost on us, though, who has the largest distant water fishing fleet in the world. That being said, I mentioned earlier relentless incrementalism. That's another concept that we have in there that's taken small bites at a time to get towards our strategic objective as we move forward. And then certainly is our brand, which I'm saying is maritime governance. Who wants to emulate or copy a brand that is bad? And here's my point there. The international community sees how well we do this for our homeland, and they want to emulate that elsewhere. So we have to ensure that our brand is strong here at home before we can go out and do other things. But we keep those as kind of governing thoughts as we move forward with our campaigning approach to get after those very threats and challenges you mentioned, sir.
Yeah, thanks for that, Andy. General Goering, General Turner mentioned allies, partners, and friends, and I know that you mentioned the being task organized, which is common across the Marine Force. Being one MEF, you have some unique opportunities to work with allies, partners, and friends. I wondered if you could comment on that, and in the context of something that Admiral Boyle mentioned, is the mission functions task piece, which General Turner is doing out there day in and day out with exercising, and the man, train, and equip piece, because if you're going to task organize, you have to understand how you can integrate those forces together. There's understanding of where there's coherency there and where there's challenges. I wonder if you had any thoughts or
Sure, yeah,
comments.
thanks for that. And I think when we talk about campaigning and allies and partners, I mean, that's where the strength is, right? It's allies and partners. And our ability to improve on one another's capabilities and capacities, work interoperability issues so that we can work together, building relationships and trust is really important. And what I've come to realize in this job, and prior to this didn't really think about a whole lot, it's really setting conditions for access, basing, and overflight should you need it. And it's only through those relationships, that trust, and that interoperability that you're going to be able to do that. And it's something in the past I probably took for granted, which I don't take for granted anymore. As far as what one MEF's doing that gets after that is we ended up taking over the Marine Rotational Force Darwin mission from 3MEF 2 years ago. So we're about to go on our third rotation. And that's a persistent presence in Northern Australia. And it's phased, its construct varies throughout the year based on what season or dry season, but what we're about to go do right now during the dry season is we will deploy an 06-led task organized MAGTF, regimental level commander with an aviation combat element, a logistics combat element, and we will deploy to the Northern Territory in Australia and work with the Australian Defence Force, building on what is already an amazing relationship. A lot of exercises will be paired up with that. The MRF-D MAGTF might even go do some up in Indonesia like they did last year. But it's our ability to have that MAGTF forward working with great allies and partners. When that MAGTF returns, we will then deploy our newest formation, which is called the Marine Rotational Force Southeast Asia. And this also is a MAGTF, but it looks a lot different than the MRF Darwin. It is a 06-led command element, and we use MU command elements currently, but it could be any command element we build. And then what we'll do is we'll bolt on various enablers and formations onto that MAGTF command element based on what they plan on doing. And what they most recently did before they returned is we basically stitched together 4 different exercises, bilateral exercises, 2 in the Philippines, 1 in Malaysia, and 1 in Indonesia. And once again, what that gets at is really building those relationships, that partnership, that trust. So 2 completely different looking MAGTFs. Probably with a little bit different purpose on what they're trying to accomplish while they're there. But the return on investment is significant. And what we envision from one MEF is always having an 06-led MAGTF command element forward. And what that will enable us to do in time of crisis or conflict is scale that up, to your point, sir. And that could be scaled all the way up to a full MEF. But you have to be there if you think you're going to have to compete and potentially fight there. So that's how we're getting after that. And then as far as command relationships go within the MAGTF structure, General Turner and I share forces all the time west of the IDL. And there's no daylight between us. I'm very happy to OPCON my forces to him, or OPCON I guess would be probably the best understanding. It's really just it's attached them within the service. And he's very willing to do that for me based on where we are within the AOR, sir. So I'll pause there if there's any follow-up.
Yeah, thanks for that. What I want to do now is offer the opportunity for the panelists to comment on any thoughts that triggered based on others that said, and use that as a segue to move to the Q&A in the audience. So if you've got a question, you can start queuing up. I think we've got one mic out here in the audience to make sure, first of all, General Turner can hear it clearly, as well as the rest of the audience so they know the context of the question being asked. But gentlemen, any comments that you'd like to make at this point based on what's been said so far? Admiral Boyle, have you got?
Hey, sir, I think I'll just build on Clapp's comments about the expertise that he's needing to build so that we all have a level understanding of how we integrate kinetic and non-kinetic effects. And so, another way to look at that is Admiral Paparo often tells us, hey, as an operational commander, I'm going to give you battle space. You need to be able to sense within that battle space, and then you need to be able to execute effects within that battle space to get after the objective. But if you don't have the capability resident within your formation, then you have to call for fires. So that's part of the rehearsal, is calling for fires. But what's become clear to me in the world of CLAP and non-kinetic cyber and space effects, I don't always know what those fires are, or where to go to call for them, or have any understanding. And so in addition to him coming around and educating our force, we need to build the expertise within our headquarters to know what fires exist within the joint force. And that's in kinetic, non-kinetic, across joint capability, in partner capability, and beyond, and at any classification level. And with partners, it's not just capability, but what authorities might they bring with them. And so when we talk about, slightly different topic, but when we talk about interoperability, a couple of years ago, the CNO started talking about interchangeability. And so I took it upon myself to make up a definition, which in my mind was interoperability is the ability for our TTPs to synchronize and the ability to communicate. But communicate sometimes requires disclosure, which is a challenge, and we always talk about that requirement to build trust and have disclosure agreements that sometimes don't come. But I think interoperability is to start a little bit earlier in the process and understand what our partners' national objectives are. And once we figure out what those objectives are, it's easier to break down the barriers of disclosure. And so in addition to looking for a policy solution to cooperate with our partners, because they are the most important element of deterrence, and in the fight, they're going to be extremely important as well. I think there's a process way to solve some of those problems. And the process way goes back to centralized planning and decentralized execution. We can always integrate across functional areas via liaison officers if we have standing planning elements that do all of the functions. And so as I journey off to do RIMPAC this summer, that's the structure that we're going to try to build, is how do we build a standing centralized planning element. And you could visualize it operating alongside a joint planning element where we can understand what the capability is across that disclosure seam. So that's kind of two topics, but again, it comes down to having a headquarters that is manned, trained, equipped, and rehearsed to do the mission of command and control.
Thanks for that. Any other comments here? Yeah, go ahead, Jamie.
So just very quickly on the top of cyber, and I talked about our Coast Guard brand being strong at home. I feel obligated to mention this, but in terms of mission essential priorities for us, that is our marine transportation system, to ensure a safe and secure, efficient and resilient marine transportation system. I think we all know that about 90% of all global trade comes from the sea. In the Pacific area AOR, there's 4 of our 10 largest container ports are right here. And we all know that that's our lifeblood, right? And a lot of us would say that economic security is national security in a way. In fact, just down the road at LALB, that's about 30% of all of our trade comes through that port, and that's about $1 billion per day. So when we talk about things like cyber security, maritime security, homeland defense, I don't want to lose that aspect of economic security in a marine transportation system. Thank you.
Thanks for that. Hey, just for the optic, General Turner, as I look across the top of the panel, I'm looking at a big screen with you. But before we move to the questions, I wanted to reach out and make sure that you were aware of that. If you've got something to say, I'm going to be able to see it visually, but also offer to you the fact that you're virtual. Any comments that you'd like to make before we turn to the Q&A?
No, Admiral, I appreciate the discussion and opportunity, but no, I just look forward to the audience questions. Thank you.
All right, thanks so much. So we'll move to the Q&A. If you could identify yourself and what organization you're from, just so we can get the context from the audience. First
Thank
question.
you. Hi, I'm Megan Eckstein with Defense News. My question's actually for both of the Marine Corps generals. General Turner, congrats for finally making it out to Japan. I wondered, obviously both of you are looking at having increased presence west of the international date line, but amphib ships are hard to come by at times. Connectors, surface connectors, we hear about the bridging solution, but I know that's still sort of emerging. And so I wonder, between the two MEFs, how do you look at sharing those resources, and does that sort of affect how you organize yourself to get Marines out and distributed across the Pacific region?
Thanks for that. General Turner, if you could jump on that first, then I'll turn it over to Brad.
Well, thanks, Admiral, and thanks for the question, and I appreciate the kind words as well. So I think, as I mentioned in my preamble comments, the capacity of the amphibious fleet is what it is, right? The capacity we have is based on what the overall program will support, and we see that the ability the material condition of the amphibious force and our connectors is kind of central to our capability here at this echelon. And so obviously my keen focus is on kind of what we have in forward deployed naval forces Japan here, and our ability to leverage those capabilities. So as we speak right now, we have 31st MU and the Fibron out doing their certification exercise right now, getting ready to once certified, then to kind of participate in those key campaigning events that General Gearing mentioned, that with partners and allies, and our ability to build those capabilities along that in the campaigning, so that in crisis or conflict we have it there. But no, we are definitely concerned about the readiness of the fleet, and I think that's kind of what, as we work with our Navy counterparts and with industry to produce better material condition to allow us to be more aggressive in campaigning. Then lastly, I think is that we also can look at other opportunities, as you heard from what one MEF is doing with MRF-D and MRF-C. We have similar capabilities here, things that we're doing in the Philippines and things that we're doing in Japan with land-based MAGTFs and Marine littoral regiments, combined with our amphibious forces that really enable us to knit this together. But that would be my answer to that. Thank you.
Thanks for that, General. Brad?
Okay, yeah, thanks for the question, and I'll really just, I guess, answer by exception, because General Turner really covered a lot of what I was thinking and what I was going to say. So the only piece I'll add is from a one MEF perspective, zero daylight between Admiral Boyle and I. There is not a course of action or recommendation that goes to higher headquarters that he doesn't share with me, and I don't, and every single one I've concurred with. Most recently, we have trained and certified the 15th MU. And they are currently, elements of it are currently deployed, and the remaining elements will deploy and join them at some time in the near future. And that's a disaggregated MU construct. That's nothing new. We have disaggregated the MU before. But what my red line is that I share with my commanders is it will work. It's a no waivers, no daylight on the workup and certifications. As long as they're fully formed, ready, trained, and certified, then they'll deploy when we're ready to deploy. So thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for that question. If I could take a prerogative as a moderator, I would point out on the discussion of allies, partners, and friends, the work that General Turner and 7th Fleet are doing in Japan. Ambassador Ram Emanuel is working closely with the Japanese ship industry to do maintenance on U.S. naval ships in ports there. A lot of challenges with that, but this is another advantage of partnering with allies and partners if we think more broadly about it. There's great opportunity here. Yes, sir.
Kai Alberg, U.S. Naval Institute member. If there should be conflict in the Pacific, the Marine Corps is going to need the Navy to get it where it needs to go, into the fight. I'd like to ask the Navy what you see as the top challenges and what's at the top of your wish list to be able to do so. And the Marine Corps, what are your top challenges and what you need to meet them to sustain yourselves and to prevail when you get there?
So what I'd like to do, Admiral Boyle, if you could answer that, and then Admiral Clapperton, look at it from your perspective. I don't think people think of you enough as a fleet commander and how does cyber play into that piece. And then General Turner, I'll turn to you as being at the leading edge out there with the impacts from that question. But Admiral Boyle, to you.
So a couple parts, I think, of that question to unpack. First is, I think it's important to understand that, we're meeting the directed readiness that we have. So the immediate response force and the contingency response force is met. So we'd always like to have more capacity. More is always better. Less is not better. And so I think we have what we are directed to have to move the force that we can afford to make ready. I'd like, it's not easy. It's a challenge. We make trades. The disaggregated Boxer ARG Mu is that way because we want them to be as ready as possible in the future. Too often, we make decisions to get an immediate capability postured somewhere with no thinking about the long-term effect to readiness. But I'm a little bit more worried about tomorrow than I am right this second. And so I think we have what we need to move that force. But moving forces, and I'll let Admiral Clapperton comment on this, it's like moving logistics. Moving logistics and moving forces around in the Pacific takes a coordinated joint effort. It's not, I liken it to World War I between the trenches in no man's land. That's what it's like. So we're going to have to be deliberate when we want to go out and about anywhere in the Pacific. General Goering mentioned that allies and partners and being forward and being present and building those relationships and being there is important because getting there is going to be challenging.
Admiral Clapperton.
Thanks, sir. So a challenging question to be sure, right? And so the Navy and the Marine Corps fight as both distributed and networked forces, and we fight as part of the joint force. And rarely, if ever, would we ever fight and or maneuver, or even on our daily interactions, do we do it unilaterally. It's always with partners and allies. So if we're going to do that, you've got to have an assured command and control system that enables that sharing, that insight, and that equal understanding. And so that's where my team comes in, working across the joint force to do that. And providing those comms forward, right? So it's about not just providing one comms pass, but multiple comms paths so that there's resiliency and redundancy. Understanding that the comm path that you have in competition may not be the one you're going to use in crisis and conflict because those are denied. And so you have to not only have those pathways available, but operate and practice with them. Understanding that when you share stuff across the naval forces, but then also the joint force, but you need to then share that with partners and allies. And how are you going to do that, right? We can get to a place, and in fact, I mentioned earlier today, we've worked with Indo-PACOM and really built one of the first ever ground-up zero trust networks that has full identity and encryption down to the data level. Now we haven't gotten to the point where we're sharing SIP and COP on that network yet, but that's coming and it's coming soon. But this is where we need to go with partners and allies, right? We can't have
a Centrix for the Japanese and a Centrix for the Koreans and a Centrix for the Philippines and Singapore. If we're going to fight in a combined and allies and partners network, they need to be able to come into a shared network, swim in that data link, and then have access to the data that's based on their identity and where they are. Now that certainly the level of information we're going to share amongst the joint force versus an allies and partners force is going to decrease depending. But again, they need to know where the target track is. They need to have awareness. They don't necessarily need to know the exact methods that got it there. Now, to get to the point where you can operate like that, you have to build the trust, right? And so this is why you have to do it day in and day out, so they have the trust that when we say something is there or is not there, or something is a valid target or not a valid target, or they're under threat or not under threat, that they don't have to ask themselves, why are they telling me that? They just trust that and they have faith in it, and we can operate in that combined force. And then, while there's more even to that, I do want to comment on the piece that Fonz brought up about the logistics, because this is another area where we have to operate with partners and allies, and this time is partners and allies in industry and across the interagency. Transcom relies significantly on defense critical infrastructure and with industry partners across the United States and across the globe to be able to enable that force that is thousands and thousands of miles away and sustain that force. And so now it's not only protecting the DODIN networks, but it's protecting with those defense critical infrastructure networks that Transcom is so reliant on. And in many cases, the Cybercom team and the Cybercom components don't have full authorities to do that. So again, it's building trust, it's building partnerships with the Coast Guard, with DHS, and with our civilian and industry partners to make sure we know how to work together to secure those networks so that when Transcom has to deliver and sustain the fight, they're able to do that. So thanks.
Yeah, thanks for that. General Turner?
Thanks, sir. Yeah, really good answers. I would just offer, in addition, as General Geary mentioned, the strength of our MAGTF organization is really key. And for us, right, the Marine Air Wing that's organic to 3MEF and our ability to maneuver using that force is critical. And we can do a lot with that in addition to joint force assets and the like. But without surface capability, you can't maneuver and you can't sustain under pressure. And that's been mentioned by other panelists as well. So I think for us is recognizing that the viability of the amphibious force, both the big deck amphibs, the LPD Flight 2, which now appears to be moving out in earnest pending appropriations in the NDAA and the like. And then the landing ship medium, as it's been contemplated and now is in the program, kind of waiting for appropriations as well. And then our other connectors, right? We can't forget about the LCUs and the LCAC capabilities too. But we need those surface capabilities to be able to maneuver and sustain under pressure here in the first island chain as critical capabilities to 3MEF. So thank you.
Thank you. Next question.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. I'm Major Lauren Serrano. I'm the operational planner at 3rd Marine Aircraft Wing under 1MAF. I've had a heavy hand in helping to build the OAIs that 1MAF is going to conduct during the summer campaign this next coming summer. And Admiral Boyle, you actually said something multiple times that really struck me. You keep using the term here about centralized planning. I'm not sure we do that as well as we probably should down here at the action officer planning level. So I'm wondering, as an operational planner, what kind of key capabilities does 10th Fleet or the Coast Guard or the Navy have that we operational planners are not necessarily integrating into steady state campaigning that we probably should, that we can start planning for now for future iterations of summer campaigns?
5 minutes.
So I'll try to give you a generic example. If I was to ask you, how are you going to tackle, some problem, you're going to look around to the capability that you understand, that you own, and you're going to come up with a solution that is based on your own capability. And so back to calling for fires. To get the most effective solution, you have to understand what's all of the capability that exists in the joint force. And so bringing together that understanding either means you have to build the understanding within your headquarters, or you have to have liaison that comes from another headquarters so that you know how to call for fires. The example I use frequently is if there was a restricted waterway that had an amphibious landing happening from the enemy, what would a submarine do? Would the submarine go after the amphibs? Maybe. Or maybe a submarine goes after a cruiser to enable an air wing to go after the Luyang, to enable maneuver by the Air Force, to enable mass on the objective. And so the way you might tackle that problem would be different. You would have an organic capability, but it may be at very high risk to force, and it may be at a low chance of success. But if we include the entire joint force, then I think we've got an opportunity to be much more lethal and much more effective. And what I have seen is that we don't do that well, because we tend to, for the OAIs that you will be planning for the summer season, we all build our own OAIs, we push them up, somebody takes that slide deck and collates it, and then pushes it up as a joint operation. It's not. A joint operation is where there are orders coming from above that order the joint force to execute a mission based on their capability and their effectiveness and their lethality and their sustainability and all of those factors and the authorities and how hard those are to get and all of that. And so I don't know that any one service or any one unit has the capability to plan an effective joint campaign. We have to bring together the joint force, and the only way I see to do that is by stealing what the Marines do so well, which is centralized planning and decentralized execution, just scaled at a bigger level.
Andy, do you have a comment you want to make?
Yes, sir. I got a lot. I really appreciate that particular question. I'm going to be pretty quickly because I agree with Vice Admiral Boyle 1,000% on that. But I also want to mention that a lot of goodness comes through combined staff talks, and that comes from the bottom up. And actually, we're involved in those. We've got one coming up here very soon. Things that I've seen that have come from staff talks in my during my tenure as the Pacific Area Commander. Is our embarked security teams that get on different vessels that are all throughout the Indo-Pacific. How about our embarked law enforcement detachments that are on Navy ships that are conducting IUU fish in different places throughout the AOR. We have a maritime security response teams working with Marine SOF units in places around that region as well. Cyber was just mentioned by Vice Admiral Clapperton. Again, he understands our authorities and how broad they are, so it doesn't make sense to have Coast Guard and cyber in our ports looking after what I call the marine transportation system for trade, but also for TIPFID and all of those other types of things. So absolutely those things are there. CSAR, search and rescue, and then I mentioned a ship that we have right now in the Indo-Pacific that's doing basically building partner nation capacity. We need to do that within the joint force and synchronize elements there. So we try to broadcast that as much as possible, but also through the combined force because there are other people getting after those same things. That's a great question. It's the overall synchronizer. Who is that person? Let me know when you find that out.
It is a great question. My quip to Admiral Boyle is 5 minutes. We had a recent conversation. WEST is a great opportunity to bring shipmates together. Admiral Boyle mentioned our serving together, and Admiral Sawyer is back there as a deputy of PAC Fleet. We probably spent an hour talking about this last time we got together, so a great question. I appreciate you bringing it up. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Diego Lage, Signal Media. Question for you, Vice Admiral Townsend. This year's China question. I heard you several times use the word incremental as part of your mission and work. Incremental sounds a lot like what the Chinese do, right? Spratlys and other locations around the world. Could you please expand? Could you please speak more about it, just to better understand it?
Yeah, I think when I went over that first, it's relentless incrementalism, right? Grabbing these small pieces to have strategic impact. And I see that comes in a lot of different ways, right? Probably one of the readily examples that I have in my head right now is the Philippines. The Philippines has an oil spill off of one of their precious islands that harms their fisheries, obviously harms their environment, harms tourism, things like that. We sent a 5-person Coast Guard team over there. They provide a unity of effort and expertise. They work with the Korea Coast Guard, the Japan Coast Guard, and the Philippine Coast Guard. And at the end of the day, we have an O5 that is basically advising the Commandant of the Philippine Coast Guard and the President of the Philippines. A very small thing, but gets you to a very large strategic impact, and that's a trusted partner. Not only that, but look at the different Coast Guards that I just talked about in terms of a regional response. A small thing, relentlessly going after it to have big strategic impact. We have cutters that go over there. We just recently, within the last year, had our first trilateral operation with Japan Coast Guard and Philippine Coast Guard and United States Coast Guard. We're looking forward to doing that and expanding more with Korea Coast Guard. This is what I'm talking about. These small things have strategic impact. If you believe that it's a maritime security issue, if you believe that the region ought to be able to respond to those types of things, we're getting after that a little piece at a time, but in a relentless way moving forward.
Thank you.
Aloha, I'm Mel Yokoyama, founder of a Native Hawaiian 8A company. It's not really a question, it's more of a comment. I was walking the floor and I ran across a sailor, and I think she solved a $1 million or $1 billion problem. But I bring this up because having folks that are recently deployed and coming back, they have problems that we would love, especially the defense industrial base, would love to solve. So having these type of forums are great, but coming from the acquisition world and government, we communicate to industry through RFIs, market surveys, RFPs, which is okay, but understanding what the warfighter wants at the tip of the spear is very important. So General Turner, thank you for participating, but having that exposure, breaking that disclosure seam with the warfighters and the defense industrial base, I think is critical. Thank you.
Hey, thanks for that, Mel. I appreciate it. Good to see you again. Hey, so I'm going to throw this back at you again, Fonz. We just had a conversation recently about that challenge of the PBE process and how you develop stuff. Industry's coming to you with bright, shiny objects and saying, boy, this would really make a difference in your world. Well, the challenge is that you, as has been demonstrated, all you gentlemen have a pretty full job jar day in and day out, not in a position to decide what is the best of breed that may get selected. And I would open this to all of you gentlemen to comment on. Clap, this may be more in your wheelhouse than the others. How do you play that role as an operator where you provide the advice up to OpNav, up to the Marine Corps staff, up to the Coast Guard staff to say, this is where my gaps and seams are, and oh, by the way, here's some suggestions about how we might be able to close those gaps in a meaningful way. Recognizing, General Turner made this comment as far as readiness goes. He didn't use the term, but here we are in a CR. We don't have a budget yet in place. The implications of inability to start new contracts going out because of that, that's a big challenge. Fonz, any thoughts on your mind? And then, gentlemen, anybody else that would like to comment as well? How do we take that information that's at the tactical edge from the deck plate level up, from the foxhole up, and optimize it for our services to make investments, maybe better informed investments of what we need to do?
Is this also a 5-minute limit on this one?
Fonz, all of your answers are required to be 5 minutes.
5 minutes, okay, roger that.
And the bottom line is, Clap, he doesn't listen to me, he doesn't listen to you, so it's...
Absolutely, sir.
So I think the way I would approach that question is, we've got a pretty well-oiled machine that does that kind of work. And generally, the fleet provides requirements. And we provide requirements by doing rehearsal or by operating. And as we're operating, we say, wow, I've got a I've got a gap here that I need to close, and so I need something new. And the system that gets after that is this triad that's called a SysCom, who designs and delivers new capability. It's a resource sponsor who fights for the money from the N8 so that we can somehow figure out how to pry open that checkbook. And it's a TICOM who man-trains and equips the capability. And that's the training, but the career paths and all of those things that we need to do. My specific problem is that the system that I operate is a maritime operational headquarters. And so that's a new system. That's not one that we've rehearsed a lot with. It's not one that we've really invested in a lot. We've done a lot of ad hoc, building our own within the each individual fleet, numbered fleet or 4-star fleet command. And so my sense is that by rehearsing the operations, by actually going through the planning process, doing COA development, evaluating risk to mission and risk to force, and then writing orders and calling for fires and doing all the things I've been talking about, we will begin to understand where our gaps and seams are and be able to push those requirements back into the system. That's the first half. And the system would be to the TICOM and the SysCom and the resource sponsor so that they could prioritize them. The second half is one of the things we do here at Third Fleet is we run a program called the Integrated Battle Problem. We also run joint battle problems. And I view that as a laboratory. It's an opportunity for all types of innovative capability, unmanned, manned, unmanned teaming, AI, ML, all of those things to come and demonstrate a capability. And I view my job as the fleet to try to identify those things that show promise. And then once I think they show promise, bring them out of the experimentation world and put them in the rehearsal world so I can start to figure out how do I actually integrate that capability into the rest of my force that already exists, and who might be the SysCom, and who might be the TICOM, and who might be the resource sponsor, because I can't do that myself. I have to show promise and then articulate what gap or requirement it's getting after, and then provide it to OpNav and the SysComs so that they can get after that problem. Boss, I think that gets after what you were trying to get after.
Yeah, thanks for that, Fonz. Andy, any thoughts from another service perspective, from a Coast Guard perspective? Do you see the requirements process differently than how Fonz just laid it out?
Sir, I do agree exactly with a lot of what Fawn said. I think I'll answer this by giving an example. We do after-action reports all the time. How do those after-action reports get compiled from operators that get fed into the generations requirement structure that we have at our headquarters? We have been able to do that in some places. I'll mention our replacement that's currently underway. We just launched our first ship, the offshore patrol cutter vessels. Lots and lots of comments from the deck plate sailor up that talked about how can we efficiently affect our missions. Obviously, a lot of our missions deal with launching teams with boats on them. This is an example of what's happened. There's a direct line for our Combat Information Center that goes to the outfitting center for these crews now to go ahead and get outfitted up. There's a small briefing area for them to go over their briefing risk. You open up a couple of quick acting water type doors and there you are on the boat deck ready to step into your boat, launch and conduct your mission. It's simple things like that. On the way back they have showers and dressing stations set up for that too. But these are requirements that come from the deck plate up, not as sophisticated as some of the ones that we definitely need, but it's an example of how that could work in a perfect world of having those deck plate folks, the folks that are at the pointy end, providing information up the system and then actually having it constructed into a new class of ship. So we're doing that. We're trying to do it. Are we perfect? The answer is absolutely not. But I wanted to pick on that example right there.
Yeah, thanks for that, Andy.
Can I just
Yeah, go ahead,
on that?
Clive.
So So from Fleet Cyber and Navy Space, right, we have a little bit of a unique view of this problem, right? So as Fleet Cyber and Navy Space, I report administratively direct to the CNO as Echelon 2 commands, but then operationally I report to General Hawk at Cyber Command and General Whiting at Space Command. But then I'm also the regional cyber coordinating authority for Admiral Aquilino at U.S. Indo-PACOM, General LaCamera at U.S. Forces Korea, and General Richardson in Southcom. So significant access to the Tier 1 level to be able to communicate, hey, this is what we see as gaps, and this is what we see that maybe you should put on your unfunded requirements list, or that you should put a GEON out for, or that we should continue to POM for and build in the future. At the same time, at 10th Fleet, Echelon 3 level, so I now can coordinate across the other numbered fleets and gain aspect and understanding from each of them. And then all my task forces are down at that ESH4 level, and they have the real close interactions at the more tactical pointy end. And then finally, the Navy Cyber Warfare Development Group. So that's a unique beast, right? So they have unlimited acquisition authority, where they are actually, while not under my authorities, it's under U.S. or ASN RDA's authorities. They're running billion-dollar acquisition programs. The great thing is, while I don't control those acquisition programs, I get to tell him what his priorities are. So that's sort of a direct input to an organization that can not only innovate in massive and impressive ways, but then go direct to the ASN level, obviously coordinating with OPNAV N8 and N9 to make sure those requirements are matched with OPNAV, but to drive those programs. So we have a little bit of a unique perspective of it and some unique paths to try to drive some things from the Fleet Cyber level.
Thanks for that, Clap. Do you have a
Just real quick, sir, just a couple extra thoughts. So obviously, there's the formal way we do it through urgent needs statements and, UNs or urgent UNs. But a lot of what we're doing now, I mean, there's a lot of great work being done at our warfighting lab in Quantico. And what we, the FMF, provide for them is a venue to experiment. And we're experimenting aggressively right now. So one MEF's very much involved with that. And it's kind of a two-way door between the FMF and the headquarters in Quantico that are really thinking about this and getting new type of capabilities or prospective capabilities out into the field, and then having us have a go at it and then do an assessment on, is this right, is this not right? So that's one way we're doing it. And then the other thing we do is when we have a 06 level formation return from deployment, whether it be a MU, Rotational Force Darwin, Rotational Force Southeast Asia, they will roadshow to Washington, D.C. and brief senior leadership on their deployment, on what they learned, what they did, and there's an opportunity for senior leaders to get insight into maybe where some of our gaps are, including our 3-star who's in charge of requirements. So that's another way that we communicate all the great ideas coming up from the fleet. Thanks very much.
Thanks for that, Brad. All right, we got the last question.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. I'm Major Victoria Crowder. I work for the Deputy Commandant for Information at Headquarters Marine Corps. And I want to predicate my question on the fact that I am not a proponent for failure. However, getting to what Vice Admiral Boyle was getting at before, we do not practice what we need to in exercises. I recognize that we learn more when we don't succeed, so we don't know what we think we know. So for example, integrated war games, tabletop exercises, fleet exercises, how do we encourage failure to ensure success in the future?
Can I answer that one?
So you're the one that mentors us in all these war games. I think you're the perfect person to do that.
Actually, with that endorsement for Admiral Clapperton, I think we need to embrace failure as a resource. We need to run fast with scissors. We can do it. We need to train to it. We just can't say we're never going to run fast with scissors. We got to be on that competitive tactical edge, which is exactly what all you gentlemen just talked about. Fonz, I think that question was directed more towards you, but I'll let you take the first bite at it and let the others comment if they'd like to.
That's exactly the reason that I shifted to this rehearsal mindset, in that I'm writing orders to the subordinate forces to try to solve a problem. And so we're not always going to solve the problem against a thinking adversary who is trying to make the problem challenging. And so then we can go back and look at it from a different angle. What if we had run it in a different sequence? What if we had synchronized it a little bit differently? And each time we're going to try that a different way because we have real forces out there that we're rehearsing with. The other part of failure is it enables me to fail as an operational headquarters. So my task to my subordinate commands is when you receive the mission orders, And the mission orders lay out exactly what the environment is, what the situation is, what the command and control is, all of those things. Did you understand what your role was? Did you understand who was taking out this threat next to you? Did you understand the whole thing? And if you didn't, please critique me so that I can get better at writing orders, and then I can get faster, and then I can scale them to the number of targets that we're going to have to work through. And so that rehearsal allows us to fail. In big exercises, the failure gets masked as we transition from phase to phase and we validate that the O plan's awesome. All that stuff happens, and there's a lot of learning. But it's the tactical end where the operator who's got his finger on the trigger says, I have no effing idea what you want me to do with this order. And so then we'll get better. And that's where we also see the innovation that comes back up. Why aren't you using this capability that I have? And we either explain it or we integrate that capability in. So I hope that gets after your answer. I see the same thing. And we are, as an Admiral Swift trained disciple, we're after failing to get better.
It's better to fail in training than on the
So
battlefield.
can I make a quick
Yeah,
comment on that too, if I could just really
Let
quickly?
me do this. We're running out of time. What I want to do is to go down the line here and wrap up with General Turner, since he's on the screen, and allow you to make any comments that you'd like to make. So, yes, over to you, and then Brad on down the line. If you've got any comments you'd like to make, please do.
So I'll take my last comments just to sort of follow up that point about wargaming, which I think is really important. So one, I don't think we need to be encouraged to fail. We fail plenty of times in these war games and exercises, right? They're challenging and they challenge us. The thing about the failure, though, that's really important is we have to learn the right thing from the failure, right? If we fail but learn the wrong thing, then we haven't even stayed sideways. We went backwards. And so, since there's so many people from industry that are here in the audience and listening in, the key to us learning the right thing is often having the modeling and simulation and the architecture to be able to structure what the adversary's kill chain might look like, what our kill chain might look like, how it's being attacked, and then enable us to understand and have a thinking red, a thinking blue that are going back and forth and learning how one might maneuver versus the other, right? We need to get out of the world of rolling dice to determine whether you win or lose, you're detected or not detected, etc. And so it's learning the right thing that's really critical. And I think what's absolutely key to learning the right thing is having the modeling and simulation that structures what red and blue really look like. And then you can have experts sitting on each side of that, and you can get into a real thinking man's chess game. And that's going to drive the innovation, that's going to drive the learning, and I think that's vital to where we go in the future, sir.
Thanks for that, Clap. Brad, any closing?
Yeah, thanks, sir. I'll just kind of echo what Admiral Clapperton just said and what Admiral Boyle said. I think part of it is you have to be really brutal in the debrief, like really brutal. Professional, but brutal. Because if you don't know what went wrong, you can't, take corrective action to make yourself better. And that's, I worked at an organization called MOTS 1 for 6 years, and we used to call it be brutal in the debrief because that's where all the learning is going to occur. I think we need to embrace the culture of being a learning organization and of being students of our profession for our lives. It is a profession, you need to be students of it. And I think that's really important. I'll just close with, most recently at the 3rd Fleet in 1MEF, we did an exercise called Steel Night. And on the 3rd week, we actually brought our staffs together at my level and his level and exercised under a task force JTF type construct. And it went better than I could have imagined. But what I was most encouraged about is in the debrief, what we mostly talked about is how to make this better and what went wrong. And I think when you adopt that type of mindset and culture, I think that's where the learning happens, and that's where we embrace failure to get better. So thanks very much. I really appreciate the time.
Admiral Boyle?
I'll just, I think, summarize by, our operational center of gravity is kind of being shifted up to our operational headquarters. That doesn't mean that we still don't execute the principles of mission command. We're still executing mission command, but we have to define what the mission is much more clearly than we have in the past. And in order to do that and learn the right lessons, I've been through many a Fallon debrief, and usually they didn't go well on any strikes that I led. Brutal honesty in the debrief, We don't have a professional adversary corps for our command post level exercises. We tend to throw together a white cell and a red team ad hoc. If this is the weapon system that's going to enable us to win, this weapon system needs to be resourced, man-trained and equipped, and challenged with professional adversaries.
Admiral Thompson?
Sir, just really quickly here, the trilateral maritime service strategy. I think you're seeing that right here. We in the Coast Guard, we work with every single enterprise that's represented here up in this panel, and look forward to continuing to partner to get after our threats and challenges. Thank you.
General Turner?
Thanks. Rich panel. I really appreciate being offered the opportunity. But I think just in summary, I think as we see the problem set out here, right, is we need as a nation to get really serious about our, improving our fighting stance, particularly out here in the Western Pacific, and really thinking through what would that look like in conflict? What would be our ability to sustain under pressure? What would be our ability to fight a protracted campaign against a peer adversary? And so I think there's investments and capabilities needed that we need to be serious about. And then, as I mentioned in the beginning, right, our key advantages is our ability to operate with partners and allies, and our ability to operate decentralized and out-tempo adversary. And we need to double down on those capabilities and reinforce those advantages that we clearly have over potential adversaries. But that's it from here. But I appreciate having the opportunity to join. Thanks.
Thanks, General Turner. Before I thank the panel, I mentioned Ray Spicer early as the CEO for USNI. Pete Daly's been the CEO for I don't know how long. A couple of decades, still here, doing great things at USNI. I think he's supporting a panel. But Ray, if you could stand up so that the audience can put a face on the name. Ray is the CEO of USNI, biggest USNI that we've WEST that we've had. So congratulations, Ray. Gentlemen, thank you very much for participating in this panel. Everyone in the audience knows how extremely busy you are, and to provide such in-depth responses to the questions that were being asked. Thank you very much. Please join me in thanking these gentlemen for their time.
All right. On behalf of the Naval Institute and AFCEA West, we would like to present our moderators and our panel members today with a Naval Institute book and an AFCEA bookmark, U.S. Naval Power in the 21st Century, a New Strategy for Facing the Chinese and Russian Threat by Brent Sadler. One more round of applause, please. And as we break, thanks for being with us today, audience members, and thanks for your questions. Before you head to the final session today, the afternoon keynote, please take a moment to provide feedback on the panel in the session survey in the WEST app. Today's afternoon keynote speaker is the Honorable Christopher Lohman, Assistant Secretary of Defense for Sustainment. I'll see you there.
She just wanted to get together?
Just a
Social.
type of event. That's all right. No worries, man. Thanks a lot. I really appreciate the opportunity.
He's in town. Execute the